Welcome to episode 167 of the Forward from 50 podcast, where we interview people over 50 who are pursuing new direction for their lives. It's an opportunity for men and women to tell their stories, their way, and in their own words. I'm Greg Gerber, the founder of Forward from 50, and your host for today's show. Today's guest is someone who chose a very different path after reaching midlife. Jake Borchardt stepped away from a traditional lifestyle, gave his home to his son, and set out on a journey that would take him across multiple countries during one of the most uncertain times in recent history. In this episode, Jake shares how that decision reshaped his life and led him toward a healthier, more intentional, minimalist, and purpose-driven way of living. As you listen to our conversation, I think you'll take away several key important insights. First, Jake explains what led him to walk away from a stable career and comfortable life to pursue something completely unknown. Second, he describes what it was like to travel during the COVID era and how that experience tested his resilience, adaptability, and mindset. Third, Jake talks about how simplifying his life and letting go of excess possessions created a sense of freedom and clarity he had never experienced before. Finally, he shares how his journey led not only to personal growth, but also to love, marriage, and a new direction centered on helping others improve their well-being. Jake's story is a reminder that life after 50 does not have to follow a predictable script. Sometimes the most meaningful chapters begin when we are willing to take that leap of faith. To tell us more about his story and the adventure he was on, please welcome Jake Borchardt to the show. Thanks for joining me today, Jake. I really appreciate the time. I understand you are a nomad. What do you mean by a nomad?
Haha. It's a very broad term, but in my particular case, I am a free traveling sovereign citizen despite the rules, regulations, and structures that are in place. And it's rewarding, but also very challenging, especially this day and age.
So do you have a home?
No, I'm sure we'll get to that part. It's part of my waking up. I guess this might be part of a awakening journey kind of framework here. But 2018... I started questioning many different things. I was waking up to many different things. The housing crisis of 2008, I didn't lose my home technically. It was unable to be sold in a short sale because of the crash. I was a mortgage holder of a Freddie Mac or whatever it was. And so I was trying to reapply to restructure my mortgage because I had some hardships happening at that time. And I ended up losing my house to foreclosure, and because my work was dependent on the housing industry, because I had my own business. While it was happening, I had just had a gut feeling like something isn't right here. It doesn't add up. And then I was watching all these headlines that the government's bailing out the banks. And I'm like, okay, the bank that wouldn't restructure my loan, now they get my house, and now they're going to get tax money. So it really bothered me, and I made do, continued on. But that was just an example of one of the things that was like this drip effect over the years. And many other things culminated in the year 2018-19. That was when I left my house to my son and embarked on my journey. So it was other things that came into play. My son was 18 years old and doing well. So that fatherly teaching and the taking care of the child, he had his job, he was good. And of course, he thought I was a little mental for what I was doing, but he was liking to get the house. So that was maybe a plateau, a big change in my life. And that's when I was 44.
Okay. So during the COVID era, you did some traveling and you wrote a book, A Feather in Time. Is this a real story about your adventure, correct?
Yes, it is a true story. And I have the book here. I finally have one of my own. Didn't get one for a couple of years after. I got a picture of my pooch Charlie on there. He was like my as Chewbacca was to Han Solo, Charlie was my companion, and he was my partner when I gave my house to my son. I was waking up to not only the housing thing was many years earlier, but I had some very vivid dreams. I am a very empathic person and not so unique, not different, but I guess special in a way that I was following those prompts. And I wrote in my journal This was in late 2018, and I have it up in my room. I'm a minimalist, but I still have my journals, and I wrote in my journal from the dream because it was too much to try to interpret everything. So I write in my journal that a virus is going to sweep the planet and Hollywood will be involved. And it didn't make sense until later, but it was like this moment in my life that I said, I need to get moving. And I wasn't sure where, and I wasn't sure for what. So that was a preparation that led to the decision to leave the house, and I left my job. It was just, I felt something coming and I couldn't quite make out what it was. I retired early. I took my 401k out at that time, took the money I had, hopped in my truck, and started journeying. And then the lockdowns hit, and then I did travel through all that period of time. It's just something so unique for all of us. We all experienced it in our own way. And here's this guy on this spiritual journey, on his way to unite with his beloved across the world, out of money at that time, but just in complete faith and surrender.
And you were in Wisconsin at the time, is that correct?
Yeah.
When all of this
I ended
started?
up back in Wisconsin.
Okay.
That was 2020. I ended up in Wisconsin late March. The lockdowns hit, I think it was March 11th or 12th or something. And at that time, I was in Canada. So I left my house in late 2019 and early December and went to Florida. There were some friends down there, some new age community, because I was waking up to some spirituality things. I grew up and my parents raised me as a Catholic. I went to a Jesuit high school. My first boss was a deacon at an Assembly of God church. And so I was very rooted in that and really loved the wisdom. I did study the Bible and things. And so I had a very good rooting in that. But then as I grew older in life, I started to realize there were other healing practices and other cultures and other types of belief systems. So I started investigating that. And as I investigated, I started to question some things in my own faith, and it led me into what would be called New Age. I started learning about Reiki energy, which is an energy healing practice, because at that time I had back pain and the medical system wasn't doing me any good. That was another thing I woke up to that helped propel me to kind of leave some of these systems, because I had a lot of back pain. I was going through some depression, anxiety, and all this stuff, but it was a lot of unhealed emotional trauma. And so that's where Reiki energy, I started learning about the Tao, started studying some Buddhism, doing massage, changing my diet, purifying, and these kinds of things. I used to be an alcoholic, so I got rid of the drinking, just all these different changes. And I've come across so many people that have gone through that. And unfortunately, so much of society is stuck in some of those patterns. So I'm glad I freed myself from that. I learned what narcissism was. And I know I'm throwing a lot of stuff in here, but it's just to try to give a little bit of a scope of all the different things that all piled up and just came together. And then I'm having these dreams, and I'm like, I got to make some changes. So as I started waking up to this chakra energy and all this new age stuff, it really seemed, oh my God, this is something different. So then I left my house, and I had some friends down in Florida. I took off and went down there, was there through a couple months. It was winter, but I was in the warmth, and I grew up in Wisconsin, so getting out of the cold was really cool. And I realized real quick, some of the people weren't authentic. They were still drinking and things and stuff, and I wasn't perfect, but there were some things that I got away from, and I went, wait a minute, this isn't what I thought it was going to be like. But I have found many amazing communities now, because that's 7 years ago. So anyways, I went down to Florida, then I ended up traveling to Long Island, New York, spent some time there. Then I got invited to Canada, because all along this portion of my life, I had a medicine drum. I was really, and I still am, very into and rooted with the Native American culture. And growing up in America, we're not really taught about a lot that. And in Wisconsin, there's so many different nations in that state alone. So I started really gravitating towards our beautiful earth. I've always done fire ceremonies. I've always been grateful for food, for having a garden, for just being grateful and celebrating these things. And as I started waking up to the toxic food supply, glyphosate, stuff in the sky, fluoride in the water, I was just like, you know what? I'm getting out of here. So while I was traveling, I'm talking about things like this. I was doing some healing, doing Reiki with people and stuff. And I found that just holding sacred space is such a valuable energetic space, no matter what your belief systems are, to be able to be open, honest, and release things. So I was doing some work like that at the time. And so I got invited over to Canada, and I was up in Canada when the lockdowns hit. And again, some of the people I were with turned out to be a little flaky, and they got all filled with fear. And I don't blame them for that. A lot of the world did. So then I went back to Wisconsin, and I didn't know going back where I would stay. And my family, they have an amazing family cabin. They said, you know what, while the lockdowns are in play, just go ahead and stay up in the cabin. That was in Tomahawk, Wisconsin. And that is where my book beginning starts from. So apologize if I'm rambling, but I really feel that, I guess, all of these different aspects of things paint a little picture of me without having to go into detail of any and all of it.
So what prompted you to travel halfway across the world during COVID to go from Wisconsin to Switzerland?
I'm a big person on surrender, trust, and faith in divine timing, that things will unfold in their own way. And when we can get out of the way, so to speak, and let that happen, the magic unfolds. So the question of why did I decide that? It was, I'm in Tomahawk. This was a couple months after I got there. Again, I had this very vivid dream, and it was like what I would describe as what heaven might be like. And then I started hearing this voice, this like angelic woman's voice saying, we will always have what we need. I'm just walking around up in Tomahawk in June, the sun's out, and this friend of mine, Priska, we had been following each other on social media. We shared a lot of content that was very similar, very inspirational kind of things. So we had a little dialogue going because some of the content she shared and some of the content I shared was similar. So coincidentally, I have this dream, and the next morning I'm walking around in this feeling, and I notice there's a message from Priska. And it happens to be a little video. It was like 8 seconds. And it was from the perspective of her camera. And she was sitting where she was. And it was looking at water with the sun bouncing off, reflecting. And it made me think, it's like my dream. And for some reason, I never heard her voice. And it was the first time she ever said anything to me. And in this little 8-second video with the shimmering water, she says, Jake, we will always have what we need. And I almost started crying because it was the voice from my dream. So I immediately, we hadn't been close yet. We haven't really chatted or anything. I called her up, video chat. And I'm like, okay, don't think I'm crazy. Look, I don't know how to say this, but just listen to this. And I explained it. It was the inciting moment. And then we started talking more and more. And it was the feeling of all that. And not kiddish love. I know we're going to be together. I just know it. It was one of those kinds of things. It prompted things to get things moving. I'm going to get to Switzerland during lockdowns. I just knew it. I didn't know when exactly or how it would work. So then the energy got put towards how are we going to do this? And that's what then set in course this entire adventure filled with all the mania going on with COVID, all of the psychological stuff happening. But then here I'm in this like bubble. Okay. And it didn't go how I thought, nowhere near it, but it did work. And it was more amazing than I could ever explain. And that's what prompted me to write that book, because it goes in line with my mantra, which is clear the fear and free the dream. No matter what age you are, that if you clear your fear, it dissolves and you realize there's not a boogeyman and there really is nothing to fear. And amazing things are there happening for you all the time. But if you're stuck in your fear, you might not see it.
Going to Switzerland then, is that where your friend lived?
Yeah.
Okay, so you were going to go spend time with her during the COVID pandemic in Switzerland, which itself was a country with a lot of restrictions in it.
Oh, yeah, the whole world. People probably forget the timeline of that as it happens. So that's another special, unique quality of this book is, and the story is, not that people want to relive that stuff, but we forget what it was like. And so that played a big role in the direction, the places I could go or couldn't go. And it makes a nice element to the story. But yeah, it was very frustrating. And yeah, we wanted to just be together. We knew we're going to be together. The story is about how trust, faith, surrender, even amidst a global chaos, it wins. Love wins. So it's also for inspiration for anybody that might think it's not the right time. You'll get feelings in your body. I'm going to quote Muji. If life wants to present a direction for you, you will be given feelings in your body. Even if your mind is torn, if you are sitting in your heart, other beings will show up precisely at the right time, and you will experience the miraculousness of life and that you are wind assisted.
That is a kind of ancient philosophy. When the student is ready, the teacher appears.
Yes.
So you were ready and open to traveling and going on this adventure. What did you do for a career before all this went down?
I was in home repair remodeling, and I had my own business in Wisconsin. I ended up hooking up with one of the biggest home builders in the state, Belinsky Homes, and life was going pretty good. My business was growing. So I did that, and then the crash came. I started losing contracts, and then my business, it was a small business. I didn't have liquidity, cash flow for 2 years on end. I closed that, and then I began with another employer, and I became the service manager, and we managed and maintained mobile home parks, apartment properties. They owned a golf course. They had restaurants plus homes. So it was everything. And I learned so much on that job, literally with being private property, running machines, doing water main breaks. Because I always say from 6 foot below to 80 feet tall, and literally everything in between. We remodeled homes, apartments, or mobile homes, then sold them, plus we rented. So I had a real good experience working with customers, working with people, plus construction, every aspect. So that was what I did, and I still have those skills, but I've definitely made some changes since.
And now you've developed an international holistic wellness company. What is that all about?
I'm very aware of the environment we're living in, the toxins in the food, the toxins in the air, in our water. And coupled with my back problems I had in the medical system well before COVID, I think people have woken up to the medical system somewhat, that they just treat symptoms and not the roots.
Yep.
Yeah, I was having issues with my back, and I was on painkillers for 5 years, and I did become addicted. I didn't become an addict or anything, but I didn't like that my body needed those. So during this whole waking up thing, I started to learn about chakra energies and all this kind of stuff, and I'm like, I'm gonna quit drinking. I'm going to get off these painkillers. I changed my diet, and that's what kind of started to heal my body in tangent with the emotional healing. We all have our own stuff, right? So I started clearing all these things up, and then I started supplementing. And that was my first leg, was my supplement products, and to give my body the necessary daily biobasics is what it's called. It's just some powder. And you get all your essential things for your body, so your body can start to do some healing. And then when I started cleaning up the diet, and I didn't eat a lot of processed food or fast food to begin with, I have a lot of home-cooked meals and food from the butcher, milk from the farmers, farmer food. So my health was in really good shape. I played hockey and pretty active in that kind of thing most of my life. But when I ran into my back problems and stuff in the medical system, I wasn't getting any relief. So I ended up changing my diet, getting some chiropractic care, and this all went hand in hand. It really helped clear my body out to help detoxify. And because I did go through what many people might be battling with, dealing with oxidative stress, dealing with symptoms and disease, I've become a master with water. So I also work with not just supplements, but also molecular infused hydrogen water. And I got the generator right here, and there's diodes inside this bottom chamber. And through electrolysis, it infuses hydrogen into the water. Water has a natural oxidation reduction potential. That is the negative charge of water itself. So if you got chlorine or fluoride in your water, you're not getting that oxidation reduction potential. So hydrogen infused water is an amazing solution to neutralize oxidative stress and to also charge up your mitochondria and your cells, because your cells know what to do. They can create antioxidants that can take on free radicals as well. So it's like a double whammy times 10. These are the things that I'm very versed in this. I've been researching it for diabetics, for nervous system regulation, for all of these things. I've become so informed through some of the amazing people that are out there. And also, I work with molecular water. I work with supplements. I'm feeling tip-top. I'm 51. I've obviously described some of my nomadic lifestyle, my minimalistic. I've cut down my life. I've minimized, and it really has benefited my life. I wouldn't recommend everybody just leave your house like I did. For me, that was my option, and I have no regrets whatsoever. Involved with some great communities now, online, also in person. So since I got to Switzerland, we did get married. We've traveled to 8 different countries. And when we get to talk to people like this, they get all inspired because they realize that you don't have to stay stuck in the life or the system that you're in. We're interconnected now with people all over the world. And that's why I do love nomad traveling. And we're going to continue doing that. Our businesses are slowly building, and eventually we aspire to create possibly our own community or invest with some other communities, because there's some people we know that are buying land in different parts of the world, and to just go visit them. And we've also had the idea of doing house shares between our little network of people, and then to allow others that might be struggling with depression or might need a time out, a retreat, to get away from all of the madness a little bit and to go be with some people that are authentic and genuine and can hold that vulnerable space for healing to happen. God does the healing, but we can be a conduit of that to open that kind of space up.
Do you sell the equipment or coach people through this healthy lifestyle to adopt these kind of things?
Yes, we're referring. It is referral.
So you're referring it to other companies to get their products and the supplements and things like that. You are just a conduit to connect people with those companies.
Yes, they would say, hey, Jake, I want to get one of those hydrogen water bottles or some of the hydrogen tablets. I'd say, all right, great. We'd have a call maybe. I'd give them a link and then they would buy it. The same thing with the supplements.
Okay, that sounds really cool. And what do you like most about the self-care and meditation aspect of your new life?
I feel amazing.
So it's just you're connected and adopted this and you feel better emotionally, mentally, physically, all of that?
Yeah, what I guess how I could describe it is you're eliminating variables. If you got a poor diet, if you're eating a lot of seed oil or fast food or things like that, processed food, it's going to affect your body. It affects your nervous system. It affects your gut, all of that kind of stuff. So I look at meditation practices as another way to eliminate variables. A lot of emotional stress and things like that. Your diet, hydrate, get some good hydration, and to eliminate variables. If you don't drink alcohol, great. If you don't smoke cigarettes, great. Just the more things you can eliminate as a variable, the more you're going to really see how much quicker that you can feel better.
I agree with what you're saying. I've talked to a number of people at Forward from 50 who have come to the same conclusion that the medical system is only interested in treating their symptoms, not the root cause. And when they take it upon themselves to do their own research, their eyes have been opened to some different ways of treating their illnesses or to adopt a more healthy lifestyle that has really impacted them in a very positive way.
I agree.
Okay. How has your journey impacted you spiritually?
It's emboldened me. Different people have different beliefs, and I respect that. What I've learned through journeying and traveling is, I mentioned I was on Crete for a year, and I was introduced to the Arab culture, that Middle East, the whole area of the world that if you grew up like me in the U.S., I met so many amazing Jordanian, Palestinian, Israeli, Iranian, the Persians, Lebanese. I worked with these guys, Egyptians. So when I got to be with them and then to learn about the Muslim culture and the Islamic culture, we're all very similar. And the perspective, how most of the world sees the U.S. from outside of the U.S. is much different than what, if you're in the U.S., that we're led to believe.
I could not agree more. We seem to get in a silo where we associate with people that are like us, and we think pretty soon that everybody is like us. And that is not at all the case. So getting out there to experiencing those different cultures and meeting new people, that's got to be a wonderful kind of thing to open your eyes to different ways of doing things and realize that what we've been taught is good, but there are other ways that are even better.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. What did you discover about yourself through this whole process?
I've discovered that I've had a lot more creative potential than I ever realized. I've had to change my approach to earning in the past, construction, maintenance, service management, that kind of thing. I got to Switzerland, so I was able to use those skills to provide some income. But then as we continued to travel, it got a little difficult because you have work-related restrictions or visa, things like that. But the time here now for the past 6 months, I'm not in that mode anymore because now I have an audiobook that I'm speaking through this mic. Man, I found my passion to use my voice when I created the audiobook and working with the sound designer, Stefan. So being there, I learned the audio format and just being able to use my voice to sound design. He turned me on to Pro Tools. And then recently I've been changing my social media content creation. I was resistant to this whole short form reels thing, but all of a sudden, literally just yesterday, I had one of my reels go viral. For me, viral is 5,000 views, but I would normally get 100. Yeah. And it's original content. It's not me just sharing someone else's stuff or putting a quote down. I'm putting some effort into this. So yeah, I've realized a creative potential in me that I probably never would have if I wouldn't have been put into a corner in a way that, hey, Jake, look, you're in a country, we're in Switzerland, and it primarily is German speaking, but where we are, it's French speaking, and I don't speak French. So I can't go over to find some guys and say, hey, look, I'll help you out for some cash or something. I can't do that. So I'm like, what am I going to do? I've been pursuing doing voiceover work. I haven't found much. I had just 2 clients. I have my coaching business, and that's hit or miss all the time. But yeah, it's kept me very active to utilize the creative potential, to learn how to use these tools of technology to my favor.
So do you plan to develop a platform like a website or podcast and things like that?
I believe eventually I will do that. I've thought about making a website, but I've gotten busy with, there's an online community I'm in, and I'm working with some people in there because there's a lot of mid-30s, early 40s folks that are coming in that are looking to do what I've already done. I'm in a kind of a good position now. I realize because I have taken all these, if you want to consider them risks or calculated decisions, because I've done that and come through it, I now realize I have some experience and wisdom that can benefit some others that may choose to pursue that kind of lifestyle.
That's what the whole Forward from 50 thing is about. People realizing that what they're passionate about and they've got the skill, knowledge, and capability of, that other people do that. And it's fun to be able to share that wisdom and knowledge and experiences with other people. So good for you for pursuing that. You also adopted a minimalist lifestyle, which I've heard more and more people are doing. It's amazing how much control stuff has over our life, isn't it?
Oh, 100%. It's a little something I made sure to add just a few sentences about decluttering in my book, because that was a necessary approach. I've always been kind of feng shui. I didn't have a big house. It was a 1,000 square foot ranch. So I didn't have a lot of stuff to begin with, but I like to know where my stuff is and to see it. When I open a cupboard, growing up in Wisconsin, you need at least a few set of seasonal clothes because of the fluctuation of temperature. So you're going to need some extra things. But as a minimalist, that doesn't mean you need 4 winter jackets. Just means you need 1. So there's a thing with that. I think it also touches into the maybe materialistic or consumer mindset of the individual. Everybody, you're free to do what you want to do. I never really had that materialistic needing to have the newest thing. So it was pretty easy for me to minimize, but there's a freedom in it. I brought up the whole clothes thing is because when it gets cold, oh, I need my coat. You grab that one coat. Oh, it's warm. I don't need a coat. I need my sandals. I have my 1 pair of sandals. So it makes some things a little more less scattered in your mind, because it's like you're not wasting energy thinking about what coat am I going to grab. It's not a thought. You just grab your coat.
I was just speaking with a woman not too long ago who came to that same realization, that she is so trapped in providing space for her junk that if she got rid of the junk, she can move everything into an RV and then go travel and see the world and experience the cultures and things like that. It's that relationship we have with stuff that often keeps us stuck in the same place. So you're coming to that realization as well.
Oh, yeah. You're hitting it perfect, the relationship to stuff. And I'll tell you, when I was a service manager, I came across many people, all walks of life, and I did see the unfortunate effects of emotional trauma that's stored as hoarding. It's amazing how stuff can really do some things to not only your nervous system, but your perception, your life, everything.
If people wanted to connect with you and ask you some questions about this holistic living and the molecular infused hydrogen water that you like, how could they connect with you?
Right now, I am on Facebook and Instagram. It is my name, Jake Borchardt. I'm old school that way. So if we would start with a message through Facebook or Instagram, then we can move that to email and or Zoom, any number of other options.
Okay, very good. Thanks. This sounds like it's been quite the journey for you. And A Feather in Time is actually a book that you wrote about this journey that was also less of an adventure, but more about your own personal healing. So if people wanted to learn more about that, they should be able to get the book somewhere. Is it available on Amazon?
The book is available on Amazon. I can provide the audio version directly. They can, at the same way, send me a message. I can get you the audio book directly through me, and that would be greatly appreciated.
And you are reading the book on your Facebook group, 1 chapter at a time. So if people wanted to listen to you read your own story, they could go there and do that.
That is correct.
Wonderful. Thank you again for your time today. I really appreciate it. And I wish you the best of luck as you continue your journey. Jake Borchardt's journey is an example of what can happen when someone is willing to question the path they are on and make a bold change later in life. After leaving a traditional career and lifestyle, he embraced a very minimalist approach, traveled internationally during a time of global uncertainty, and ultimately built a life centered on purpose, connection, and personal growth. Today, Jake focuses on holistic wellness and works with others who are interested in improving their health and simplifying their lives. He also shares his story through his book, A Feather in Time, which chronicles his experiences and the lessons he learned along the way. What stands out most about Jake's story is the sense of intention behind his choices. Rather than staying where he was comfortable, he followed a path that aligned with what mattered most to him, even when it required stepping into the unknown. If you'd like to learn more about Jake, connect with him, or explore his work, you can find him on Facebook and Instagram under his name, Jake Borchardt. From there, you can reach out directly to learn more about his approach to wellness and his journey. And if his story sparks something in you, then maybe it's worth asking yourself what changes you've been putting off and what might be possible if you finally took that first step. That's all for this week's show. If you'd like to start living a more meaningful life, I encourage you to download our free guide to finding purpose, which is available at www.forwardfrom50.com. I'll have another inspirational interview on the next episode of the Forward from 50 podcast. Thank you for listening, and if you like this show, please consider leaving a review wherever you download the episodes.